like a lot of these little things about us as we develop, that we definitely know that something is changing. Because you look at yourself right now, and then go look at a baby picture of you, you know something has changed, right? So, we don't always see God working in our lives in a lot of the same ways, especially when things are hard or hurtful. Just the same as when we're growing, we don't really notice the change in our bodies and our physical appearance. We know when things get awkward, like especially around teenage years, when it's like, whoa, oh, where'd that come from? We know when that happens, we notice that. But God working in our lives is a lot the same. It's like, think about this. There are times when you'll suddenly just get it, or like at fall retreat or something. Let's say you're finally like, this is what it feels like to be immersed in the joy of the Lord. That didn't just happen. That's God working in you over time, and then you notice it. Okay? But what we're going to talk about today is how, even in the midst of hurt or pain or betrayal or things like that, God is still at work. It's really hard to see that sometimes. All right? So, have you ever felt betrayed? Like, if you think about it, have you ever felt betrayed by, let's say family? That's kind of a big one. Maybe your parents said, "I do" forever, and you found out that forever had an expiration date. That hurts. That carries feelings of abandonment with it. Or maybe your parents haven't, but you're worried that they are, or you kind of don't know where you're standing in that relationship, and you feel like somebody's about to disappear, and that kind of hurts in here. Or maybe, my parents, they've been together forever, so you don't have that in your history. Maybe, though, you've been betrayed by close friends. Like you've revealed some secret crush to one of them, and only to find out that they told everybody. Then you can't look anybody in the eye. You're like, oh my gosh, they know. Maybe you felt betrayed like that. Or maybe you felt betrayed just by life circumstances in general. Like you've been playing soccer your entire life. Tryouts are really just a formality. But then you get cut. What happened? What happened there? I thought I was a shoo-in. I thought this was a formality. Like that happened for me in basketball. I moved to Texas. I was told you're going to be on varsity, and then within a matter of weeks, I got knocked down to JV. Then I got knocked down to the bench on JV. Then I got knocked down to the sophomore team for no reason. It just happened. And I was like, what happened there? I didn't even have to try out. I was just on the team, and then it's like, you go down there where you're playing on Tuesday night instead of Friday night. And why am I telling you all this? Well, the point of this morning is that even when it's not obvious, God is still at work. Even when it's not obvious, God is still at work. And we're going to be looking over the next 6 weeks at the story of Joseph from the Old Testament, specifically the book of Genesis, because in his life, we see a lot of how to deal with overcoming certain things like betrayal or temptation or feeling just like you're forgotten, things like that. But today specifically, we're going to talk about that even when it's not obvious, God is still at work, especially in the midst of betrayal. Now, I want you to turn to Genesis chapter 37. It's not very far from the front of your Bible. Genesis chapter 37. It's the first book of the Bible. On mine, it's page 38, so you're not going very far. Genesis 37. And we're going to start in 19, but I'm going to give you a little bit of background so you understand where we're going with this, okay? So Genesis 37, let me tell you a little bit about this. Joseph is the youngest of 12 brothers, okay? So he's got 11 dudes that are older than him. He's the baby of the family. These are all the guys that become the tribes of Israel. If you know anything about Bible history, Jacob was the father of all these children. He gets renamed to Israel. That's where the nation comes from. His 12 sons, Reuben, Judah, Simeon, Levi, Asher, Naphtali, all these guys, they become the tribes of Israel. Joseph is the youngest of these guys, and there's a lot of family drama in this family, okay? So I'm going to give you some context here, and then we're going to read our passage. Genesis 37, 3, it says, now Israel, that's Jacob, he loved Joseph more than any of his other sons. Already we got drama. Parents aren't supposed to play favorites, right? How many of you have ever thought your parents were playing favorites? Or you accused them of it, right? Let me tell you, it's not happening. You may think it is, but it's not. Like, me and April, we love our girls equally, even though they're different, and it may look like we're playing favorites just because one has a bad attitude. My lights just died, but it's all good. But this is what it says. He had been born to him in his old age. Joseph had been born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him. It's that Joseph in the coat of many colors thing. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Okay? There's another place where it says they hated him all the more. Little brother's starting to talk about this dream that he had where they're going to bow down to him, and they hate him for that. Another place, it says they hated him all the more. All right, so you kind of get the sense that his brothers do not like him very much. And then we look in verse 17. It says, Joseph went after his brothers in the fields, and he found them near Dothan. But they saw him in the distance, and check this, before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. Now, we pick it up in our passage, starting in verse 19 and going to 27. So I'm going to read that. I can't really see very well anymore. 37, 19 through 27. Here comes that dreamer, they said to each other. Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams. When Reuben, he's the firstborn, he's the oldest. When Reuben heard this, he tried to rescue Joseph from their hands. Let's not take his life, he said. Don't shed any blood. Throw him into this cistern here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him. Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take them back to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the ornate robe he was wearing, and they took him and threw him into the cistern. The cistern was empty. There was no water in it. As they sat down to eat their meal, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were loaded with spices, balm, and myrrh, and they were on their way to take them down to Egypt. Judah, that's the thirdborn, said to his brothers, What will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood. And his brothers agreed. Now flip over to 39, 1 through 2. Just one page over, probably. 39, 1 through 2. It says, Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. Potiphar, an Egyptian who was one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him there. The Lord was with Joseph so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. Now, let's pray. I'm going to turn the lights back on, and we're going to get going, all right? Daddy, we love you. We thank you for your word, and we thank you for how raw and how honest it is. And I pray for the students and the adults, too, in here that feel betrayed or have felt betrayed, that you would teach us through your word, through the life of Joseph, how to overcome that betrayal. We love you. In your name, amen. All right, I got to kick these lights back on because I cannot see my notes or anything. So why don't you, while I'm doing this, look back at 37, look through some of those key phrases, and see kind of how you would feel if you were in Joseph's shoes. So let's check this out. Genesis 37, 19 through 24 is where we're going to be right now, okay? So have you ever thought that your family has issues? You ever thought that? Like, my family is messed up. Or you got some issues going on. Or like Christmas is not a happy time for you. Or Thanksgiving is something you dread. Or you have to check the calendar of who you're actually going to be spending time with this week or next weekend or whatever it is. You ever felt like that? I mean, you think your family has issues? Well, you're in good company. But this is one of the things that I love about the Bible. And it's how we can trust that we know it's not a made-up thing. Because the characters in the Bible are so raw and so real. Okay? They're broken people. And if you wanted to make up your own religion, it would be very easy to say, you know, Joseph, the youngest brother, just high-fived all his brothers and they were cool. And everybody just gave a group hug because we're not supposed to judge and we're just supposed to love. Yeah, let's go to heaven. You know? That would be lame. But we see in our scriptures that we see not only is Joseph favored by his father. He's hated by his brothers. And he's not just like, God, that guy, he gets everything he wants. And they throw a little tantrum. No, they hate him to the point where they want to kill him. And not just one of them, all 11 of them are like, yeah, good idea, let's kill him. And they're just like, what is happening here? This is how we can trust that the Bible is true. Nobody would include that kind of family drama if they wanted to point you to God. But because of their brokenness, we can relate to that. And we can say, man, he is a good daddy. Because he took this broken situation and he did something with it. And we're going to find out what that something is, all right? So here's the thing. A couple things that we know about Joseph and his family and how they have issues. Number one, Joseph was the youngest of 12 sons that Jacob had from 4 different mothers. 4 of them, okay? He had 12 kids, 4 women. Joseph was the only son of his favorite wife, so that made him like double favorite, So there's already drama here. It's already broken. It's already like, dude, Jacob, calm it down, man. Stay with one lady. And then Jacob, he also played favorites. We saw that. Joseph tattled on his brothers. All right, how many guys, you can't stand the tattling from younger brother, younger sister. Joseph did that, so it kind of messed him up there. He had 2 dreams that he bragged about because it made him seem better than his brothers. Okay, so first of all, culture thing. In this culture that we're reading about, the oldest son is the one that got everything. All right, he's the one that mattered. He was the heir. He got all the inheritance, that kind of stuff. The baby of the family did not matter. Now, who's here? Who here is the baby of the family? I am. Anybody else? Yeah. Older siblings, they always hate us, don't they? Because we get whatever we want, right? Not in this culture. They didn't get anything they wanted. So for the baby of the family to be the favorite of the father and get this distinction from him, it just ticked them off. Because they're like, you're not supposed to even be relevant in this conversation. Okay? Oh, and by the way, we said this. His brothers wanted to kill him. Like, for real. Not just like, I hate you, I want to kill you, I wish you were dead. Like, no, they had a plan. They planned this out. And when they saw him coming, they're like, all right, how are we going to do this? He's almost here, like 300 yards. This is going down today. What are we going to do to kill this guy? So the drama builds. They plot to throw him into a cistern. You guys know what that is? A cistern is like, it was a pit out in the desert that they would make, and not just like a well, but it was like a pit that they coated with plaster so it was waterproof. So when it would rain, it would fill up with water, and then they could use that during the dry seasons. And these things were deep, okay? So it wasn't just like you trip over it and you keep on going. It's a pit that they're all over the place, and they plot to throw him into one as a prison, and they were just going to leave him for dead. Can you imagine if your brothers or your sisters just found a hole and said, boop, and then left you to die? How would you feel in that? Betrayed? Abandoned? Hurt? Many of us feel that way with life circumstances or friends or family. We feel like we're just left to die. We feel like we're abandoned. And then these guys, they not only plan to throw him into a cistern, they come up with a lie to tell their dad. They want to say, hey, yeah, a wild animal killed him. Ooh, it was gruesome. Here's his coat. When in reality, they're just like, yeah, we threw him into a pit in the desert and wanted to watch him just dehydrate to death. One brother convinces them not to kill him. They say, let's not murder him first and throw him into this pit. Let's just throw him into the pit and leave him there. Like, okay, that's a better option. Instead of killing him quickly, let's just let him die slow and painfully and alone. But then what happens is they beat him up and they throw him in anyway. He shows up and he's like, hey guys, Dad sent me. Boom, let's take his coat, throw him in the pit, go. It was like, how blindsided could he have been by that? It was just, he got ambushed by his own brothers. What if you rolled up like Christmas time and your cousins come in and they're just like, hey, give me all your presents? Like, what? You would not see that coming. It would be the worst Christmas ever, but there'd be a Christmas miracle somewhere. But here's the thing, even in the midst of betrayal, you can trust that God has not abandoned you, right? You can rest assured that he is always at work in your life, even when it's not obvious. And for Joseph, in this story right now, it is not obvious. So let's move on to verses 25 through 27. All this drama builds, and then what do the brothers do next? I want you to look in verse 25. Because when I'm reading this, I'm thinking like, all right, like in a movie when you see like someone's like thrown into a prison or thrown down into a pit, and I can just kind of imagine like the camera's looking up through the hole, and suddenly like this the stone just like slowly rolls over the top. You know, you're like, oh, and there's like this dramatic music building, and then the screen goes dark. You know? That's what I always picture in moments like this, but that's not what happened with Joseph. They beat him up, they strip him down to his undies, they throw him into a pit, and then what does it say they do? They don't lock him up and then go, ha ha, we're victorious. What do? Verse 25, what's it say? What? They sit down and eat. What? Now here's why none of you are going, because you don't understand what's happening here yet. They sit down to eat. They beat up their brother after plotting to kill him. They throw him into a pit to leave him for dead, and then they have a picnic. They are devoid of guilt. Their conscience is not stricken by this at all. It would be like if you kidnap somebody, throw them in the trunk of your car, and then go through the drive-thru because the struggle made you hungry. You're like, and duct tape their face like, yeah, can I get a number 2? Like, where is the conscience in that? There's kicking and screaming going on in your trunk, but not in your mind, not in your conscience. And that's what's happening with his brothers. They had this plot to kill the brother that they hated, and then they just sit down and have a picnic. Probably not too far from the hole where he's going, hey, let me out! What did I do? And he's just screaming and screaming and screaming. And they're just, pass me the lamb, or whatever. But this is also symbolic because when you have a meal with somebody, it signifies that you are close to them, that you want to have fellowship with them, that they're in with you, that they belong with you. Think about it. You don't really go sit down at a perfect stranger's dinner table. That's an intimate place. That's where, me and my wife and our kids, we spend a lot of our time around our table because it's awesome to eat together. That's why I spend a lot of the mid-high budget to come and eat with you and with the volunteers, because there's something about just gathering around food that, one, is awesome, and two, it's fun to do. Look at Jesus in the New Testament. I mean, seriously, how many times did he gather around a meal with people? Ministry happens around a meal. Fellowship happens around a meal. And for his brothers to kick him into a pit after beating him up and then have a meal without him is effectively saying, you no longer belong to us or with us. We don't want you. You are as good as dead to us. You are far from us. We are done hating you because we have handled it, and you are no longer even relevant to enter our thoughts. You're out, Joseph. Get away. We're abandoning you. Goodbye. That's essentially what's happening. They're having this picnic and like, hey, all right, cool, that's over. And then look what else they do. Verse 27. It says, let's sell him. Judah speaks up and he says, hey, we see some Ishmaelites coming. They're on a caravan to Egypt. They're going to sell things. Let's sell him to them. Because he actually says, what are we going to gain if we just leave him to die? Well, they may feel a little vengeance. They may feel a little vindicated. But that's not going to fill their pockets. They want to have more picnics, right? How are they going to get that? Money. So they sell him for the slave price. So now Joseph is not just kicked out of the family, he's also considered a slave and a prisoner and worthless. And so they sell him as a slave, and the going rate back then for a slave was 2 years' wages. Okay? So 2 years' worth of work split amongst 11 brothers. They profited about 2 months each. Okay? So that's a good chunk of change. Today, full-time, $10 an hour, I don't know, that's like $4,000 or $5,000. I don't know. So it's not nothing, but it's not that much either. It's 2 months worth of work. Now here's the thing. When you're hearing this story and when you're thinking about your own story and the times that you've been betrayed or you feel like you've been abandoned, it can be really easy to kind of question, like, God, where are you in all this? And he may have seemed completely absent to Joseph right then, but was he? Here's the thing. Here Joseph was. He was facing death, either by heat exhaustion, dehydration, wounds that didn't heal, whatever. But a caravan of traders passed by at just that time. And his brothers are having a picnic, and they look up and they see, we can profit off of this. See, some people would say that this is a coincidence, but I don't. I see God at work in this moment. At just the right time, these traders came along. Why? Because God wanted Joseph in Egypt. He worked out all things for his good in this moment. He could have died a slow, painful death, but instead God rescued him from this brokenness. He rescued him from this abandonment because he said, I have a bigger plan for you. I am not done with you yet. I think back to college, my freshman year, I was in a car with a lady friend, and she was going about 80 down a Texas highway, tried to pass somebody, saw a car coming, swerved to miss it, lost control, spun out into the opposite lane, and then flipped over twice, landing on my side both times. Boom, boom, and then we landed upright. The entire side of the car was crushed in, like it was almost touching my face. And I walked away from that. I had a scratch on my knuckle. That was it. And in that moment, I saw God just blaring it out like, I am not finished with you, buddy. I have got things set up for you. And you're not going out that easy. A double rollover on a Texas, that's not, come on. You're going to go out bigger than that. Come on. You know? So it's like God was saying, I'm not finished with you. Hey, and he's saying the same thing to Joseph. I'm not finished with you. You think you're going to die in this cistern? Psh, you're going to Egypt, and things are going to blow up there because of you. And the same is true for each one of you. You guys have felt betrayed before. Most of you are just like, yeah. Like, you don't want to raise your hand because you don't want to tell a story. I'm not going to make you tell the story. You don't have to reveal all of this. But if you look into your heart, you know that there's pain there from abandonment and hurt in some way. And the beautiful thing about the gospel is God says, that's not where the story stops. You don't just let life beat the crap out of you and then be done with it. God steps in and he rescues, just like he rescued Joseph. He brought him out of this pit. So what happens in Egypt? Because he gets sold to these slaves, or these traders as a slave, he goes to Egypt, and then we see what happens in 39, 1 through 2. Verse 2 of that sums up really the entire morning. Let's go there and read it, 39, 1 through 2. You guys there? Cool. It says, now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. Remember, that part was not a coincidence. That was God's plan for Joseph all along. It was just kind of a weird way to get there. He didn't just walk to Egypt. He got beat up by his brothers, threatened with death, left out of the family, and then sold as a slave. But he still got to Egypt. So God's plan prevailed. Potiphar, an Egyptian who was one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him there. Now look at verse 2. The Lord was with Joseph, so that he prospered. And he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. Bought as a slave, living in the captain of the guard's house, prospering in everything that he did. He wasn't a prisoner in Egypt. This is the beginning of his redemption story. This is the beginning of how when you get betrayed or abandoned or hurt, God reaches into that and heals it and brings you to a place of salvation and eventually victory over it. Now here's the thing. I was thinking through ways that I have been betrayed or abandoned in my own life. And honestly, it was really hard to think of like one of those youth pastor stories that's just like, wow, everybody's going to cry. Like, I don't have those. I mean, there's little moments that just kind of build and build and build and build that hurt, and I still kind of have that wound in me. But one that I was thinking of was my wife and I went down to Texas. We flew down to surprise my mom on her 60th birthday. My dad set up this whole thing. She had no idea that all of her kids were coming in to celebrate with her when she turned 60. And so we're flying into Dallas from St. Louis. Like, it was a little bit of a drive for us. So we flew into Dallas. My brother lives in Wichita. My sister lives in Wichita. Okay? And so they're both coming through Dallas to go to where we needed to be. All right? My brother's already there. These are details you don't really care about. But the fact is that my sister, we called her and just said, hey, on your way through Dallas, can you pick us up at the airport? Because we're waiting there. We have no car. We have no transport. It's like a 2-hour drive from where we're going. And just thinking, that's kind of a no-brainer. Like, you have to come right by the airport anyway. Can you just stop and pick us up? And she said, well, I mean, it's a little bit out of the way, so no. Like, okay, well, what are we supposed to do? So we called my brother and said, can you come get us? And he was like, yeah, sure, I'll come get you. All right, first of all, hey, win in his column. We're playing favorites. No. But he's driving 2 hours, and the thing that happened to him on the way was there was like some massive like tanker truck explosion on the interstate that shut the whole thing down. And he is just stopped for like 2 hours in the middle of the road, not able to go anywhere. And we're sitting in the airport just like, oh my gosh, what is happening? We had to, like, they closed the thing. They kicked us out. We had to sit on the curb. You know, they shut the airport down. They wouldn't even allow us to sit in there. So we're waiting there. And he is like freaking out angry because of how selfish, you know, this sister of mine acted. And then he's stuck and trying to help us, and my sister's already gone and not helping us. And so we're just kind of sitting there abandoned, like, how inconvenient for everybody in the family at this point. We could have already been to my parents' house, but no, we're sitting on the concrete outside the Dallas airport. Kind of cold. We're waiting on my brother, who should have been there already, but is barely left because of a tanker truck explosion, and he's stuck, and he's angry, and all he wants to do is yell at us about how much he hates her, you know, and it's like, I don't want to hear that. I just want to go home. I'm hungry, you know. And then all that happened just because it was a little inconvenient for one person in my family. And then it became something that my brother still talks about to this day, about how awful that was. And I was like, yeah, I'll let that roll off, okay? And I know that's not like an earth-shattering story, but it is a story of abandonment by family. I mean, it was a simple request that turned into a huge family drama thing. And the thing about betrayal or abandonment is it's okay to question God in those moments. Okay? If you feel that, if you feel hurt, if you feel betrayed or abandoned, you don't have to just kind of suck it up and go, I will call upon your name. You know, you don't have to do that. You can go, God, where are you in this? What is the point of this? Why is my dad gone? What did I do? Where are you? What's happening here? What do you want to teach me in this? You tell me to rejoice always, and I'm really ticked right now. I don't know what to do. You can question God in the moments of hurt and pain. It's fine. Do we blame him? No. We don't blame God for it. Because we see that in this story, Joseph could have blamed God for all the bad stuff that happened, not realizing that suddenly he was being lifted out of this pit and then prospering in Egypt, because that's where God wanted him to go. Some of you right now, you're in the midst of a very dark hurt, a very raw hurt, and you have no idea why that is happening. But someday you will. I don't know when. I still don't know what God was trying to teach me through my sister abandoning us at the airport. I don't. I'm like, what kind of teachable thing can I give these guys because of that? I have nothing. I really don't. I don't know what God's trying to teach me, but I do know that it is for my good because I know that God is for me. So many of us have been betrayed by family, by trusted friends, or just by life circumstances in general. But remember Joseph, he was hated. Like literally hated by his brothers. Not just like annoyed, hated. Not writing a do not enter, girls only, whatever sign on his door with a marker. It was like, he was hated to the point where they wanted to kill him. And they wanted to collectively lie to their father about the way that he died. And then he was sold into slavery by his brothers. But the good news about this is not the end of his story. We got 5 more weeks to see how it unfolds. And the beauty of the gospel is that your hurt is not the end of your story either. Man, don't you want to find out what God has in plan? Don't you want to find out why you're going through this? Don't you want to find out how he is going to just kick down the door, peel back the darkness, and bring you out into light? Don't you want to know that? Oh my gosh. I want to know that so bad for you. Like, I can't wait. When that happens, will you please tell me? Be like, guess what happened today? I got pulled out of that cistern. woo, and it's glorious. Tell me when that happens, because I know everybody's hurt in some way. Tell me when that happens for you. And I don't care if it's 25 years from now. Tell me when that happens. Hopefully Jesus comes back before then. But tell me when that happens. Because, oh my goodness, it's awesome. Here's the thing. In the hurt and the betrayal of life, even when it's not obvious, like it wasn't obvious for Joseph, even when it's not obvious, God is still at work in your life. So what will it look like for you to trust God in the midst of betrayal so that you can overcome betrayal? Let's pray. Daddy, thank you for the story of Joseph and for the integrity that he had in his faith and for trusting in you. And God, for those of us that are hurt by life, by friends, by family, I pray that you would show us how we're going to get out of this cistern, how we're going to get out of this pit. Bring us into a place of joy. Bring us into a place of salvation. We trust you because we know that you're for us. We know that you have a good plan for us. That's what your word promises. Just make that real to us. I pray for the students that are just hurt and lost and confused, that you would show them why you're good. We love you. In your name, amen. All right, love you guys.